Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Bob.
Hi everyone, my name is Robert. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Robert.
I don't go by Bob. I almost didn't stand up. I want to say, man, he's not here. I hate that name. Ugh. Horrible way to start the new year, damn it. Bob. Yeah, resentment, exactly. Well, everything was fine until I got here this morning, I'll tell you. Teach me to go to AA. Well, Happy New Year to everyone. Is anybody new in their first 30 days of sobriety? This is not the place I would have wanted to have been in my first 30 days. I'll be honest with you, I hated AA for the first long time. It seemed like I'm delighted to be here this morning. You know, I was at a party last night, and you know, it was a dinner party. It was 8 of us and hanging out and just ringing in the new year. And of course, everybody thought I had been drinking because I was the wild one. And then I went to Starbucks this morning and I sang Happy New Year to all the baristas and the whole place. They all thought I was still drinking. And but I just like to have fun. And that's not the guy that walked into Alcoholics Anonymous 23 years ago. I was morose and depressed. I was tired. I was very, very tired. There was a line, you don't hear it very much anymore in AA, but there's a line that said, "Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?" And when somebody said that to me, I knew they understood me, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. There's another line that's in the big book that says incomprehensible demoralization. And only people in AA understand what that means. And I said, wow, these people understand me. And because that's the way I used to live my life. I was not a happy camper. I like to drink. I love everything about drinking. I love the glass that you put wine in. I used to drink bourbon and 7, and I like the smell of liquor. And I like sitting up on a bar stool and pointing out all the alcoholics who are here every single night, for crying out loud. And I knew who all the alcoholics were, and that guy really should get some help. He's in here every night, and I liked everything about it except the loneliness, the degradation, the self-pity, suicidal thoughts, the bizarre behavior, the embarrassment that I would cause myself, the anger that I would cause in my friends, the disappointment in my family. Those are all the ingredients, the byproducts of active alcoholism for me. When I came in Alcoholics Anonymous, I really didn't want to stop drinking. I was just at the end of my ropes. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, but I just didn't want to stop drinking. But somehow my girlfriend told me that she thought I was an alcoholic and that perhaps I might want to go to AA. And I kind of a miss when she said that, and I said, AA? She said, you know, your friend Tim's been sober for 7 years. I had not a clue. I had not a clue. Robert, and she said to me, she goes, Robert, Tim told you he was in AA. For God's sakes, he sat and talked to you about it for 45 minutes. And you know what's sad is 23 years later, I still cannot bring myself to remember him ever mentioning AA to me. But I actually know he did. He did it in front of a room of 40 people and sat and talked about being an alcoholic, being an Alcoholics Anonymous, being sober. I still cannot remember all that. But a little bit about myself. I grew up in a Catholic family, Irish Catholic family, and nobody in my family, my mother or father, are not alcoholics. My mother was a prescription pill addict, and she's passed away. Both my parents have passed away. So I grew up in a family where drug addiction was a problem, and I remember saying that I would never be like my mother, never going to be like my mom. I'm not going to use drugs. And that probably saved me because I never took drugs. I mean, I smoked a little pot, did a little amyl nitrate, I did hash and speed and marijuana, but that's not drugs. I mean, I'm talking real serious drugs. You know, I never did LSD. That's what I always hold out for. But I like drinking, and my uncle is an alcoholic. My uncle died of this disease. I didn't know that he was an alcoholic. All I know is when we went to Aunt Mary and Uncle Jim's house at around 6 o'clock or halfway through dinner, he'd be sent to bed. So drunk, he would just, that was it. In the middle of dinner, he would go to bed. And on the way home, my parents would discuss it. And I was just a youngster, and they would talk about Uncle Jimmy being the alcoholic. And boy, would they wish they would do something. I wish he'd get some help, blah, 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 blah. What happened to Uncle Jimmy, I was 30 days sober. I was 25. I just turned 25. And Uncle Jimmy burned to death in his apartment as a direct result of being drunk. There was just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He died. He passed out with a cigarette. It caught him on fire. And his apartment front door was a sliding glass door. And he was so drunk that he could not turn the lock and walk out the door. And my aunt said, you know what, would you take my son over to his apartment? They were separated. Would you take him over to his apartment? He needs to get some money, and I don't want him to go by himself. And I had just told her that I was sober in AA for 30 days, and I was so sorry to hear of her loss. And we went over to the apartment, and on the glass was his claw marks from his hands where he tried to claw himself out of the glass. And he literally died right there at the door. I was mortified when I saw the inside of this apartment. You can imagine an apartment that burns up is just horrific. Years later, my aunt told me, she said, there was no money in the apartment. My son didn't need to go over there, but you needed to see that. Because your uncle had tried Alcoholics Anonymous for years, and had never gotten that program. As a matter of fact, she went to the foyer of her house, and she lifted up the seat in the foyer, which is a storage thing, was filled with AA books and literature. And she said he could never get this program. One of my sponsors said to me, if you've tried AA, or you've come to AA, I should say, at least have the audacity to tell people that you don't know whether Alcoholics Anonymous works or not because you've never tried the steps. And the one thing my uncle never did was the steps. He went to AA, certainly sat in these rooms, but he never tried. And but that had a lasting memory on me, is that active alcoholism, you do die from this disease, and that impressed me a lot. Anyway, so I grew up in this family, this Irish Catholic family, a little scattered. This Irish Catholic family, I have 6 brothers and sisters, and the predominant feeling I had growing up was being alone. Now, it's a huge family, 9 people at the dinner table. My father was a plumber. He worked very, very hard to put food on the table and put us all through private schools. My mom was a registered nurse, and I just know that the predominant feeling I had, as I still look back to this day growing up, that I was by myself. That I didn't fit in, I wasn't a part of, that nobody liked me. I insisted my parents show me my adoption papers well into my sobriety because I was so convinced I was not a part of that family. I know I'm not adopted because I look just like my dad. My dad's passed away, as I said, but I've seen pictures of him and myself now, and I look exactly like him. But the feeling was so predominant inside of me that I insisted to my mother when I was a year sober, show me my adoption papers. And that's how disconnected I felt from my own family. And that's the way I felt from life, from you. I never feel a part of. Last night I felt a part of. See, that's the difference. If there's anything I have to say, the benefit of staying sober is last night I was at this party, there were 8 of us, and I felt loved and I felt a part of. But it has taken a long time being sober to get that feeling. Because the way I grew up, 24 years old, and I'm feeling disconnected from my own family and not a part of. That's the predominant feeling. And when I drank, that feeling went away. And I knew my sisters and brothers got along. They all laughed at each other. They knew what to talk about. And I was just socially inept. I didn't know what to talk about to them. When I was 12, actually when I was 9, I started smoking cigarettes behind the garage. And I was probably a daily smoker by the time I was 10. By the time I was 12, I was having sex and drinking. I mean, I grew up young. I saw my nephews hit 12, and I thought, oh, dear God, they need to talk to them, because I know exactly what they're doing. Well, they're not doing that. It turned out they weren't doing those things. That was just me. I was the one smoking and drinking and having sex at 12 years old. Normal kids don't, because I see these little kids on the little skateboards and stuff like that. I think, oh dear Lord, I can't imagine them doing that kind of stuff. But that was my secrets, and those are the ways I was dealing with life. By the time I was 18, my father said to me, he said, you know what, when we go to Aunt Mary and Uncle Jim's and they offer you a drink, you don't have to accept it. And I thought, oh, what a silly man my father is. He's thinking I'm accepting the drink to be nice. I'm accepting the drink because it's tolerable to be at Aunt Mary's and Uncle Jim's now. I don't like Aunt Mary. I love my aunt. I love them. I really do. But it's uncomfortable to be in a room with other people. I would be fine if there was nobody else in the room. I really would. I can do very well by myself, but you put people in the room and I instantly feel uncomfortable because I'm less than you or I'm better than you. Those are the two predominant feelings I have put in a room with other human beings. I am a piece of crap or I'm so much better than you. What, dear God, am I doing here? And I'm never in a place where I'm just a part of. And that's why last night, just being with 8 friends of mine, half of them were sober and the other half were not, I felt a part of. Whether drinking, they were drinking or I was, and the funny thing was they had a bottle of wine between the 4 of them, and I think they didn't even finish it, which was just appalling. And I kept saying, I bought one of them a bottle of gin for Christmas, and I said, because he really wanted this bottle of gin, this really expensive gin. He's not an alcoholic. So I said, have you opened it yet? Oh, no. I said, dear God, have a drink, would you please? It's bugging me. It's been a week already, and all he wanted was this bottle of really expensive gin. And he has not yet opened it. And even when I insisted last night, I said, for Christ's sakes, have a drink, he still did. Oh, yeah, we'll get to that later. I don't understand that. You give me a bottle of gin, the first thing I do is I hide it. I hide it in my house. I have this clear image of me. Somebody gave me a bottle of vodka for a housewarming gift when I was 24. I embezzled this money to buy this house and blah, blah, blah. But I took at a housewarming, you know, and I took that bottle and immediately hid that bottle of booze. That's what I do, you know, and then I drink your liquor is what I do. I had a roommate and I would drink her liquor. And I would keep filling the bottle of gin up with water, you know, so that she wouldn't know that I was drinking it. I'm cheap, and I lie, and I'm just selfish. I mean, even about my drinking. So my father didn't get that I was drinking because I feel uncomfortable inside. There's a 99-cent store across the street. If I walked in there, I'd feel uncomfortable. I just feel uncomfortable. I could not go into Beverly Hills until I was almost 8 years sober. And I had to call a friend and say, I've never been into Beverly Hills. I'm terrified to go into Beverly Hills. And I said, would you go with me? 8 years sober. Because I just felt so unworthy. I knew if I walked into the streets of Beverly Hills, somebody, I don't know who, but they were going to walk up to me and say, you don't belong here in this neighborhood, get out. And that's the way I felt my whole life, completely unworthy. So you walk around, if you're like me and you walk around with I don't feel a part of, I feel unworthy, I'm incredibly uncomfortable when it comes to people because I don't know what to say after you say hello, you know. The only thing that makes sense for me is to drink. And when I drink, I can walk into Starbucks this morning, people in there, and just break out into a song of Happy New Year to my favorite baristas, you know. I can do that. Or last night I can wear party hats and blow horns and just have a goofy time to where they think I'm the one that's drunk. See, I can do that with liquor. I can go water skiing, I can go snow skiing, I can drive my car, I can go grocery shopping. I do all those things drinking, and I did all that stuff drunk because I can't do it sober. I've had car accident after car accident after car accident because I don't even like driving unless I have a drink in between my legs. And that's just the way it is. I like drinking and driving, you know. I just am terrified. I'm filled with fear. People bug me. But when I drink, I can get out there and do life. I can show up and act like I'm supposed to act. And that's the way it is for me. So by the time I was 20, my sister-in-law said to me, you're a bad influence, you know, you should, you know, this neighborhood kid was living with our family, and she says, you're a bad influence on him. And I said, you're right, you're absolutely right. I heard what she had to say, so I stopped smoking pot in front of him. I took him out drinking with me, but we stopped smoking pot. I'm going to be a good influence on him, you know. And I was 24. I asked this woman to marry me that I had dated on and off, and We were out water skiing. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. I called her up and I said, my family's going water skiing. We used to water ski all the time together. Would you like to go? And she said, oh, you know, Robert, I haven't seen you in a couple of years, and I'm engaged to be married, and I don't know. Well, if there's one thing about me is I can talk anybody into anything. And if sure enough, I talked her into lying that she was going away with her uncle for the weekend and to come water skiing with me, and she did. And while she was there, I was drunk. Of course, I had just walked out of the women's bathroom, going, why are all these women in the men's room? I was just a blubbering mess, and decided that now would be the perfect time to ask her to marry me. I mean, just a mess. And she said, you know what? She goes, I think you're an alcoholic, and I think you should go to AA. And that's how I ended up in AA. And I said, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, for Christ's sakes. And she said, Robert, you've been drinking since 6 o'clock this morning. And I said, Eileen, you don't seem to understand. We're water skiing. We're on vacation. That's what you do when you water ski. You drink in the morning. It's perfectly acceptable. The water is cold. It's scary to get on those skis. Jesus, you don't seem to understand. And see, I have a whole lot of rules about what is and what is not okay about drinking. If you're doing yard work on a Saturday and you happen to be drinking at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, that is not alcoholism. That's yard work. Everybody knows that, you know. If you're at an airport and you're traveling, just the mere fact that you're getting on a plane to go somewhere means you're on an international schedule. It doesn't matter whether you're flying from here to Vegas. You are now a part of a whole different time zone where drinking hours do not apply. And so you have drinks in the bar. I have missed airplanes because I was busy drinking in the bar. You know, well, you just get the next one. You know, that was the days when you could. And that's not drinking, it's traveling. And when you drink in the morning and you're drinking Bloody Marys because you've been drinking all night before, you're on vacation. That is not alcoholism. You're on vacation. And I have all these rules about what is and what is not alcoholism. And funny, it kind of changes as my needs met. You know, what I need not to be alcoholism is not alcoholism. And that's the way I drank. That is just the way I drank. When I had that housewarming party, I tried to keep that party going the next morning by a whole bunch of friends spend the night. I set this big table up in my living room for breakfast, and what did everybody have? They all had a glass of beer, right? First thing in the morning on the table, and nobody drank it. I was the only one. I said, oh, come on, let's keep the party going. Let's keep the party going. They said, oh, no, I had too much. Silly. I just don't understand that kind of drinking. You know, I got up this morning, the streets were empty driving here, which was really nice, actually. And I thought, oh, these people, where are they? They went home to bed last night. Silly people. They should have kept it going, because when I'm in that mood, I just want to keep it going. I want to keep it going. I want to keep feeling good. But for me, that feeling of good turns so sour. I want to commit suicide. I'm depressed. Let me tell you how much I love you. Oh my God, that's right. I just love you. Oh, Jesus. And then I tell you all my problems, and then I can't stop drinking, and then I go home and I sit in this rocking chair in my living room and I plan my funeral. And I see the procession of people walking by my open casket, weeping for the way they have treated me my whole life, wishing God they had a second chance to treat me better. And that's what I would do. That was my drinking. It's pathetic. That is my alcoholism. And it's right in the big book. Selfishness, self-seeking, self-pity. That we think is the root of our troubles. I had no idea. Didn't see that in the big book until I was 10 years sober. Right in the big book. I read that at 10 years sober. I said, oh, dear God, Bill Wilson knew about alcoholism, didn't he? I mean, it's like, hello? The lights didn't come on until I was 10 years sober. That's when I picked up I read that book. I said, oh my God, he knows exactly how I feel. Because that's me. Self-pity, self-seeking, selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles. Hello? The lights went on at 10 years. So this girlfriend of mine said to me, she said, you know what, if you go to AA and you give AA a chance, you go for 30 days, we'll talk about getting married. And I waited 30 days. I picked up the phone and I called her from work. I said, hi, Eileen, how are you? First words out of her mouth, not hi, Robert, not nice to hear from you, how's it going? instantly, the words out of her mouth, had not talked to her in 30 days, hadn't seen her for 2 years before that. The first words out of her mouth was, "You haven't gone to AA, have you?" I couldn't believe it. How did she know? How did she? All I said was, "Hi, Eileen. I ain't going there. I'm going to sit in my rocking chair. And I'm going to call the telephone company every day and complain there's something wrong with my phone line because I come home and there's no messages on my answer machine. I know something's wrong with my line." And I used to do that. I used to be very belligerent, very, very angry. I used to travel without ever having an airline reservation. Ever. Didn't matter whether the plane was full or not, I eventually got on it. Because I would throw tantrums at the counter. I'd start screaming and yelling to the point that they would put me on the plane to get me out of the airport. It used to happen all the time. "What do you mean I have no reservation? For Christ's sakes!" And I'd start screaming. I was always drunk. I've gotten on food fights in airplanes. I had fun when I was drinking. I really had a lot of fun, but it was also very miserable because that's a fine line. Because it's that self-pity, it's that self-destruction, it's the self-destruction that fell not only as the line in the big book says on the living room furniture, but on the lives of everybody around me. You know what? I hurt more people. I have, it's being taped. We'll skip all that. You know what we do. You know what we do. And I've hurt people. I've hurt people. There are people that I have hurt that I cannot make an amends to. I've talked to my sponsor. Every sponsor I've ever had has said the same thing. This is one of the situations in the big book where you cannot say anything at all. And you will just have to wait until that person one day wants to talk to you about it. I've hurt people that I've tried to make amends to that won't speak to me. And so as much as I like to laugh about the days of my drinking, there was nothing funny about the people that I hurt. You know, I embezzled money from my dying grandmother. It was more important for me to steal her money and to buy a house than it was to make sure she had medical insurance and proper care. I emotionally hurt people that will never recover. And I'm not proud of any of this. That's not the part that I laugh at. I came into AA and the only reason I'm in AA is there was this person that walked into my job. This is right after Eileen had called me. I called her and she said, "You haven't gone to AA." And this guy walked into my job and I started chatting him up. And he said, "You know what, we used to work together, you and I." And I said, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Robert, just across the parking lot, I was working for Sears, and now I was selling TVs and cereals for Sears." And he said, "Robert, when you were over in the auto department selling tires and batteries, I worked with you." He said, "Just 6 months ago." I had no recollection of this person. None. Absolutely none. But I said, "Well, here's my card. Let's go out and have a drink or something." And he said, "I don't drink." And out of my mouth, I don't know where this came from. I swear to God, I have no idea. I said, "What are you, an alcoholic or something?" And he said, "Well, why do you want to know?" Moment of clarity. I had a moment of being honest. I think I wanted his friendship more than anything else. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think maybe I have a drinking problem or something." Turned out he was 6 months sober in AA, 5 months sober. And he just lit up. He called his wife over. "Robert called AA." This is yelling this in the Sears stereo TV department floor. "Robert called AA. Robert, whatever name, Karen, Robert called AA," or whatever. I said, "I did not call AA. I did. I got so defensive, right? I said, "I did not call AA." Shh. I said, "I simply thought about calling AA. I called 411 and got the number, but I did not call AA." And he gives me his card, tries to talk to me, and I thought, I want nothing to do with this guy now. And I tore his car up and threw it in the trash. Did. As soon as he walked in, got him out of that TV department as fast as I could. 30 days later, it is September 7th, 1980. My family is throwing me a birthday party for my 25th birthday, which will be 2 days later. It's for me and my brother. I always like to leave that part out. And I go to church that morning. I was going to church a lot every Sunday and saying, Dear God, help me not to lie today, cheat, steal, have sex, smoke, do drugs, drink, lie. Help me be the good person that I used to be. Help me be that choir boy that used to go to Mass on Sunday and sing in the choir and be an altar boy. And I was a good boy. I want to go back to that boy before I started smoking cigarettes. I was a good little kid. And you know what? I would pray and I would feel the presence of God, and then it would be dashed out quickly, just like it talks about in the Big Book, just like it talks about in Bill Wilson's story. The presence of God came into his life, but it was suddenly pushed out by the clamor of worldly things. That would happen to me every Sunday. I would feel the presence of God come in. I'd feel hope, and I'd feel like things were going to be okay. And as soon as I seemed to get in my car, it would dissipate. And I didn't understand it, but I would go every Sunday trying to hold on to that connection with God. I went to church. Dear God, today I got this party to go to. And you know what? People are going to be there. That's a problem. And sure enough, by 6 o'clock, I was drunk. I had sworn. I had made an ass out of myself. And I walked in, I saw this is my family. People who love me. My family loves me. They love me more than they should, because I'm not that great of a brother. But my family adores me. I walk into the party, and all of a sudden I'm incredibly uncomfortable. And if you're an alcoholic like I am, there's only one thing you can possibly do, and that is drink. Didn't matter that in the morning I felt connected to God. I have to drink. It's not a choice. I have to drink. You don't seem to understand. I walked into I saw them. I got incredibly uncomfortable. I went in, I grabbed the bottle of bourbon out of the living room where they all were, and I went into the kitchen to make my drink so they wouldn't see how much I was drinking, for God's sakes. And I made myself a bourbon and 7. That used to be my drink of choice. And I walked into the living room. I sat down, and God, I'll be damned if my family didn't see this. There was not, hi, Robbie. Nice do they call me Robbie. I'll go with that, but not Bob. No, Bob. It was, not nice to see you. Happy birthday. We're glad that you're here. First words out of their mouth, I am 24 years old. Robert, or Robbie, we thought you were going to do something about your drinking. I, to this day, have no recollection of my family ever talking to me about my drinking. Ever. I don't know where that came from. What do you mean I was going to do something about my drinking? I can't remember. And I said, I have. And they said, Robert, look how much you're drinking. I was so out of it, I didn't realize I had poured the bourbon and 7 in a clear glass. And it was mostly bourbon with just a little bit of 7-Up on top. And they saw how much I was drinking. I said, for Christ's sakes, I am doing something about my drinking. I haven't even taken a swallow yet, and I'm already belligerent and angry and swearing. I said, I went to AA. I went to AA. And they said, drink, get it out of your system, and God damn it, that's what I'm doing. And that's how I started my birthday party. I was screaming and yelling at them, And they all just backed off and said, oh, it's going to be a long night, and I got drunk. That's what you do. And when I get drunk, all of a sudden I can be there. Except I had a moment, I went into the swimming pool. I do not go outside doors unless I've had a drink at this time. I don't go grocery shopping. I don't drive my car. I don't do anything unless I've had a drink. Now I'm drinking. Liquor's in me. I can now go in the swimming pool. That's what it takes. I can't go swimming unless I've had drinks. That's just the way it is. And I'm in the swimming pool, and I'll be damned if I don't have a moment of clarity that changes my life. I am drunk in the swimming pool. And my 2 brother-in-laws are standing by the edge of the pool, and I think, honestly, to this day, I've never asked them, but I think they were kind of sent out to keep an eye on me. I think that's what happened. And they're standing at the edge of the pool, and they're drinking a beer, and they're chit-chatting, and they like each other. I've known them. They've known each other for a long, long time. They're not my blood relatives. They're my brother-in-laws, and one of them raised me, and the other, they're just chit-chatting. And I am completely befuddled by the fact that they're standing there talking to each other. Dear God, what do they have to chit-chat about? How do they do that? And I'm drunk, and I said, Dear God, I wish I felt like they feel right now without the use of drugs and alcohol. See, I was comparing how I felt on the inside to what I thought they were feeling by judging them from the outside. I have no idea what they were feeling, but they looked like they were happy, and they were chit-chatting, they were getting along, and they were laughing, and they were having a single beer. And I just went, I don't understand this. Dear God, help me. I went in, I passed out. I can't tell you much about the rest of the evening, except I got in my car to drive home. And this kid was walking in front of a crosswalk, and I made no effort not to run him over. And I already hit a pedestrian once before drinking and driving. And he's walking across the crosswalk, and I said, I don't care if I kill him tonight, or I don't care if I kill myself. And it scared me. I said, Dear God, help me. I uttered that prayer, and I think it's a prayer that everyone in this room has uttered, and I think it's a prayer that alcoholics who get to AA pray. And you know what happened? I went home, and I sat in that rocking chair. I knew I was in deep trouble. This guy got out of my way. I didn't run him over. And I said, Dear God, help me before I kill myself tonight or I kill someone else. I went home, I sat in that rocking chair and said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I should check myself into Camarillo Mental Institution because I knew I was insane. I was hearing voices and I was seeing crap. And I said, they're going to tell me I work for Sears, I own my own house, I have a dog. What are you talking about? You're crazy. This is the American dream. Welcome to it. So Camarillo Mental Institution was out. So then I thought, I'm going to commit suicide. And I said, I have a gun, I'm going to go blow my brains out. And I thought, well, then I can't have an open casket, and I have been planning that funeral for a long time. Swear to God, this is all true. The third thought, why don't you call AA? Why don't you call AA? It was 10 o'clock on Sunday night, September 80th. I picked up the telephone, and a guy by the name of Frank answered the telephone. And if he hadn't answered that phone that night, I wouldn't be here today. He said, tell me about your drinking. And I said, just send me, do you have literature? And he said, no, we don't have any literature here at AA, but if you go to a meeting, you can find what you're looking for. And he said, why don't you talk, well, I have somebody call you, I don't want anybody calling me. And he tried to talk to me, he really did. And that guy was not there, I wouldn't be here tonight. Whew. And he said, do you think you could not drink between now and tomorrow? And I said to him, what do you think, I am an alcoholic or something? And he says, because if you don't drink, you can go to an AA meeting. He made it a condition. Well, don't give me a challenge, pal. And it was so divinely inspired. I go to work the next morning, and I haven't had a drink since, maybe 12 hours, not even that. 8 hours, because it was around 10 o'clock at night. I had to be to work at 8 o'clock the next morning, so it's been 10 hours. And in walks the same guy who 30 days ago had tried to talk to me about AA. Walks into my job. He holds his hands up, and he says, I know this is going to sound weird to you. This is how he started it. I know it's didn't say anything else. I know it's going to sound weird to you. I'm at home. Today's my day off. I was watching television. He said, quote, God told me to come and see you. Something's happened in your life. And I just started bawling, and I said, I called AA last night. I think I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to a meeting tonight. And the guy had 6 months of sobriety now. He took me outside at Sears. He bought me a cup of coffee, and he 12-stepped me into AA. It wasn't a guy with 20 years of sobriety. It was a guy with 6 months of sobriety who was lit on fire with Alcoholics Anonymous that brought the message to me. And he tried to talk to me about my drinking, and I said, you don't seem to understand. It's not the first drink that's the problem. It's the fourth drink. I always think, oh, my God, how did I get started again? And he said, no, you don't understand. And he sat, that's all I remember about that conversation. I knew at that point God wanted me sober. I knew as clear as a bell God wanted me sober. I was terrified of cults. I had been in Est earlier, and if you went to Est, you know what I'm talking about. I started my journey in AA, and it was a painful journey. The people that get up here and say, and this happened to me, they get up to the podium and say, I'm at home. I've never felt so much better. I'm 30 days sobriety, and my children have gone to college now, and I've been promoted at work, and I'm getting married next month. And I would say, "Yeah, bitch, I hope that son of a bitch drinks," and because that was not happening to me. And I pulled my sponsor aside one time. This person got up, "Oh, I'm closing escrow and we're getting married next week." And I was miserable. I was miserable. I went to my sponsor. I said, "I pray that bitch drinks." And he said, "You can't do that. You may not pray that anyone drinks." I was crazy. He said, "You can pray that they get hit by a bus. You can pray that their mothers are murdered. You cannot pray they drink. Do you understand that? That's blasphemy." And I said, "What do you know about blasphemy? You're Jewish. I'm Catholic. I know about blasphemy." And I was wild. I was wild. I was crazy. I was crazy. I was filled with just fear and just self-loathing and self-pity and jealousy and envy that I didn't want to hear. "Oh, welcome home. Welcome home. This sucks. This sucks. I'm feeling bad because there's people in here. You don't understand. I need to drink." And I would leave meetings and want to drink every night. I just couldn't stand it. It was painful. It was physically and emotionally painful to be in these rooms because there were people here and they hurt my feelings. And my feelings get hurt by the simplest of things. Two people can walk in. I can walk into a room and two people are chit-chatting. When you walk in a room, people tend to look up. They notice you. It kind of comes in your peripheral vision. So you may be chatting and all of a sudden you see somebody and you look over. Yeah, anyway, so let me tell you the story. And they start laughing. They're laughing at me, God damn it. Now they're talking about me. And that's what it'd be. No, I'll get them. I'll get them. And I'd bump them with their coffee, teach you to talk about me, Who do you think you are? I was just nuts, just nuts. I have no idea what the hell they're talking about, but I know it's about me because everything is about me, And I was 2 years sober. I wanted to drink. I was crazy. I was depressed. And I just didn't drink. For the first 2 years of my sobriety, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. Didn't think I was an alcoholic. Did not want to believe that I was an alcoholic and I could not drink because that was my lifesaver. I don't want to give that up. And I just kept coming and they would say things like, "It's better to be in AA by mistake than to be out there by mistake," which I hated because that closed the door on the option of leaving. And I had a whole bunch of stuff I had to deal with in sobriety that I didn't want to deal with. And I just kept pushing it on the back burner, push it on the back burner, push it on the back burner. At 22 months of sobriety, I begged my sponsor to let me write a 4-step. Begged him, and he said, "Robert, you're not ready. You're just not mentally ready." And I thought, I cannot be that mentally ill. Because he kept telling me, "No, you're not ready. I'll let you know when you are. No, you're not ready. You're not ready." I kept begging and begging and begging, "Please let me write that 4-step. He said, "You're not ready. For whatever, I can't deal with it anymore. Write the 4-step. And, of course, it was not a 4-step. It was what they've done to me. That's what I wrote, because that's where I was at 2 years of sobriety. I couldn't hear the message. It was in the steps, right? And anyways, I did it, and I read it to him, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "It's not a 4-step, but Robert, it will have to do for you." I mean, that's pathetic. That's pathetic. I won't let the guys I sponsor get away with that crap today. And so, I just stayed in AA. I was very caught up in the fellowship, very active in AA. I had a commitment, so I was sponsoring people. I was busy in AA. But the one thing I wasn't doing was the steps. Wasn't doing the steps. And I got more and more and more and more uncomfortable. When I was around 10 years sober, I wanted to drink. And I started hanging out with people who were drinking and smoking pot. And I found myself at a party one night, a dinner party. I was probably 12 years sober. And somebody lit up a joint. It was at a dinner party, which was weird. Somebody lit up a joint, and they handed it to me, and I said, "Oh, I don't smoke," and I handed it to the next person. And I realized that in 12 or 13 years, this was the first time I had a joint in my fingers, and that I was this far away from a slip. And I thought, what, dear God, are you doing? What in God's name are you doing? Have you forgotten about the misery where you came from? And I said, something's wrong here. And I changed sponsors, and my life changed at 15 years of sobriety, and it was literally rocketed into a dimension like they talk about in AA, that I have a peace and a serenity that I have not known. Now, I'll be honest with you, that peace and serenity and my level of levity and the feeling of comfort that I can walk into Starbucks and sing Happy New Year's Day to the barista girls, and the people treat me nice. I go into the Starbucks, I barely ever pay for coffee anymore. Oh yeah, we've got you taken care of, don't worry about it. And it's not because they just like me because I've become a likable person. But that happened. The peace that I have found came around 21 years of sobriety. It took a long time for me to feel comfortable in my own skin, a part of, and just feeling good about who I am. But about 15 years of sobriety, my life changed drastically. I asked this guy to sponsor me who did not want to sponsor me. He said, oh dear God, no, not Robert Culver. Please not him. And this is what he prayed to God. Please not him. Oh no, I've taken on a lot of people, but not her. I do not want to deal with him. And so he just said, oh. He gave me some direction and I fired him. And, and you can see he went, phew, that's glad, that's over. And life got really bad. Life got bad. I was dating someone and I found him in bed with somebody else a couple days before Christmas, and I went berserk and I broke into his apartment and got all the stuff that I'd given him for Christmas, and I took it all back to the stores, and the sponsor saw me in a meeting. He said, what's wrong with you? Come here. Sit in my office, which is, if you're new, an office in an AA meeting is an empty chair where everybody can hear. And he said, he goes, what is going on with you? And I said, and I told him the story, and he just said, that is not sober behavior. And I went, oh. So the next day, which is now Christmas Eve, I go back to the stores and buy all that stuff, all that I had taken back, and I break back into the apartment, I put it all back. I see this, my ex-sponsor in the meeting, and he goes, dear God, what is wrong with you? And I said, well, I went back to the store, I bought all the gifts back, I broke back into the apartment, and I put them all back. And he goes, I didn't tell you to do that. I said, I was so frustrated. He goes, and that's not sober behavior either. And I said, I screamed out, oh God, you're torturing me, tell me what to do. And I said, would you sponsor me again? And he said, oh, I've never stopped sponsoring you. You just never noticed. And I was just so frustrated. And then we started on a course of vigorous action that's all laid out in this big book. This guy lives the big book. I would call him and I'd say, this son of a bitch did this to me. Let me tell you. And he goes, oh, what's his name? I said, John. Okay. I said, yeah, anyway, so you go, so John, now you're upset about what? I would start to tell the story. He'd just cut me right off. He goes, oh, what does that affect? What are you talking about? What does that affect? This is what it's affecting. Dear God, this is happening. It sounds like self-esteem, personal relationships, sex relationships, pocketbook. He kept cutting me off. I said, whatever. He said, I said, well, let me tell you the story. He goes, and what's your part in this? And I just was irritated. And he started teaching me the steps. He says, Robert, you need to do an inventory. You need to do an inventory the way it's laid out in the big book, and you got 2 weeks to do it. And I said, oh, I've already done one. I said, I've been working on it for a year. And he said, well, you bring that over to my house then. And I kid you not, I walked into his house with a paper bag, legal-sized notebook paper written on both sides this big, 775 resentments. Each page had their own resentment written on both sides. I walked into his backyard and he said, dear God, what is that? I said, that's my inventory. He says, what? He goes, you wrote about resentments, sex, and fears? I said, oh no, this is just the resentment part. And he said, he did. My sponsor's 65, and you could see in his eyes thinking, I will not live long enough to listen to this crap. And more so, I don't want to spend the last few years of my life listening to this. And he goes, we're going to try one. Read it to me. So I read it to him, and he said, oh no. Oh, no. You're going to go home and summarize. I want you to summarize that inventory. And I was pissed. I'm not going home and summarizing this. You're out of your mind. So because you'll be back here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, I showed up, and he goes, where's the inventory? I said, I couldn't do it. I'm not about to summarize my feelings. I'm 15 years sober. I'm 23 now. It's not the way I am now. And he says, fine. You can't do it. I'll do it for you. Got out a piece of paper. You come over here. Sat underneath the umbrella in his backyard, and he goes, who you mad at? Who you resentful at? And I have my sunglasses on, my arms crossed, and I said, no one. He says, okay. we'll start with your mother. And he wrote my mother's name at the top of the piece of paper. Now, what are you so upset about your mother? And I said, my mother is dead, for Christ's sakes. I said, she was a pill addict my whole life, a drug addict. And he goes, okay. And he said, and what does that affect? I said, my whole goddamn life is affected. I was so belligerent. And he said, no, that would be personal relationships. And he said, sounds like security and probably a little bit of pride in here. He says, what's your part? He says, my part? He says, where have you been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, afraid? I said, what do you think I did? Opened her mouth and put the pills in and chased it down with water? I had nothing to do with this. And he said, he was so patient. He said, you're an alcoholic, right? I said, yes. And he said, and you've done things to hurt people, haven't you? And I said, yes. And he said, I know you went out and made amends at one point because you told me. He said, did you want them to forgive you? And I said, well, of course. He said, how judgmental of you of your mother that you won't forgive her. How lack of understanding. How critical are you? And he wrote these things down. He says, now what's the solution? This is all true. I said, she's dead. There is no solution. He said, how old are you? And I told him. He said, why don't you just grow up and move on with your life and forgive your mother? I was pissed. No one had ever talked to me this way. That's why at 15 years of sobriety, I was a nut, right? Because I would never let anybody tell me this. And he says, now we'll do your father. What are you mad about? And I said, my father never kissed me and never told me he loved me. What does it affect? I said, my personal relationships. I was arrogant. He says, what's your part in it? And I said, what? I had no part in it. He says, how many children in your family? I said, 7. He says, would you think you were an only child? How about selfish? How about self-seeking? How about you wanted what you wanted when you wanted it? How about lack of understanding and tolerance? How about lack of ability to share with others? I just began to bawl. I began to cry. Somebody had finally gotten inside of me and got me to do the work. He said, what's the solution? And I was bawling. I said, I guess forgive him and grow up. I was so pissed at him. He said, yeah, I'll go home and do an inventory and put my name next. And I went home and did an inventory, and I did it exactly the way it was laid out in the big book. I did a fear, resentment, and sex inventory. I went to him, read it 2 weeks later, and my life literally changed. The work had started. And that has been my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. I hate to bring it down to that, but I got to tell you, it's been the steps. The steps. The fellowship has been great. 3 sides to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what the triangle and the circle, which we don't use in AA anymore, unfortunately. We still own the copyright. The 3 sides of the triangle, at the base of that triangle is the steps. But it's also the fellowship and being of service. I was great at being of service. I sponsored a lot of people. I gave a lot of my time, and I was in the fellowship and meetings all the time. I was in meetings. But the foundation of the triangle, the base of my program, was missing. And so it just would fall on top of itself. And the base of the triangle is the steps. And that's the one thing I hadn't done. When I did the steps, I had 15 years of being of service and 15 years of going to meetings. When I finally did the steps, the triangle was completed, and the promise of the circle and the triangle is that body, mind, and spirit would be one. I would be a whole person. And it just took this guy to sponsor me, to love me, to be willing to sit there and change me. And I got to tell you, for my 20th birthday, he said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I'd love to go to Cuba. My sponsor and his lover and we went to Cuba. And I got to tell you, when we got back, I had a great time. We were gone for 2 weeks. We got back. He called me the next day. He said, I just wanted to say hi. I missed you this morning. I missed not having breakfast with you. What had changed in 5 years' time was from a guy who wanted absolutely nothing to do with me to somebody who he loved. And he said to me, I really love you like my own. He says, you have just become such a wonderful man. And I continue on the journey with my sponsor today. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new, I wish for you the 3 sides of the triangle, the foundation of the steps, the fellowship, and to be of service, so that you too can have the promise of mind, body, and spirit of being one. Thank you for the 12-step call on me this morning.